They say no good deed goes unpunished. But for Hollis, a single act of kindness didn't just punish her, it rewrote her entire destiny in blood. She thought she was just saving a shivering, terrified boy from a storm in a dirty alleyway. She didn't know that the boy was the only heir to the city's most ruthless criminal empire. She didn't know that by touching him, she had just declared war on his enemies and invited the devil himself into her living room. Tonight, listen closely. This isn't a fairy tale. This is how a waitress became a target, and then a queen. The rain in Viridia Bay didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. Hollis wiped the counter of Sal's 24-hour diner for the 100th time, the smell of stale coffee and fryer grease clinging to her pores like a second skin. It was 3:17 a.m. The neon sign outside buzzed with a ding-epileptic flicker, casting a sickly pink glow over the empty booths. "Lock up when you're done, Hole." Sal grunted, waddling out from the kitchen with a trash bag slung over his shoulder. "And don't forget to kick the dumpster. Rats are getting bold." "Sure, Sal," Hollis murmured, her voice raspy from exhaustion. She checked her phone. 3 missed calls from the landlord, a text from the electric company. Final notice. She had $42 in her bank account and a jar of quarters on her dresser. She was 24 years old, and she felt 80. She flipped the sign to closed and pushed out into the alleyway to dump the final bag of coffee grounds. The rain hit her instantly, icy and relentless, soaking through her thin uniform. Thunder rattled the dumpsters. She tossed the bag, wiping rain from her eyes, and turned to go back inside. That's when she saw it. A shoe. A small, expensive-looking sneaker jutting out from behind a stack of wet cardboard boxes. Hollis froze. "Hey!" she called out, gripping her keys like a weapon. "We're closed. You can't sleep here." No answer, just the drumming of rain on metal. She took a step closer, her heart hammering against her ribs. She pulled back the sodden cardboard. It wasn't a drunk. It was a child. A boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, curled into a tight fetal ball. He was shivering so violently, his teeth were audible over the storm. He wore a tuxedo jacket that was 3 sizes too big, ripped at the shoulder and soaked through. His skin was the color of old paper. "Oh my God," Hollis gasped, dropping to her knees in the mud. Hey, wake up." She touched his cheek. He was burning up. A fever so high it radiated heat even in the freezing rain. The boy's eyes fluttered open, startlingly blue, terrified eyes, and he flinched, scrambling backward into the brick wall. Don't tell them," the boy croaked, his voice barely a whisper. "Tell who, honey, you're sick. We need to get you to a hospital." Hollis reached for her phone. The boy's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. No hospital. They'll find me. Please." Hollis looked at him. Really looked at him. Under the dirt and the rain, the clothes were high-quality silk. There was a watch on his wrist that probably cost more than her life. And on his neck, just below the collar, was a bruise. Not a fall. A handprint. Kidnapping abuse. "I can't leave you here," Hollis said, panic rising in her throat. If she called the cops and this kid was running from an abusive dad, she might be handing him back. If she called an ambulance, she'd be buried in paperwork she couldn't understand. The boy's eyes rolled back and he slumped sideways, unconscious. No. Hollis scooped him up. He was dangerously light. She looked at the back door of the diner. Sal had cameras. If she brought him in there, there would be a record. She looked down the street toward the subway station. Her apartment was 3 stops away. It was the stupidest thing she had ever done. It was reckless. It was dangerous. She pulled off her oversized denim jacket, wrapped it around the shivering boy to hide his face, and ran for the subway. Hollis's apartment was a 4th-floor walk-up in the worst part of the East End. The radiator clanked and the window leaked, but it was dry. She laid the boy on her saggy mattress, stripping off his wet clothes. Under the tuxedo shirt, his chest was covered in rash-like spots. Raction, poison. "Okay, think, Hollis, think," she muttered, pacing the small room. She grabbed her first aid kit, mostly stolen supplies from the diner. Aspirin, a thermometer, rubbing alcohol. His temperature was 103.4. She spent the next 6 hours fighting a war against the fever. She used cool rags, forced sips of water down his throat, and whispered lullabies she hadn't thought of since her own mother died. By dawn, the rain had stopped. The boy was sleeping peacefully, his breathing steady. Hollis sat on the floor, back against the door, exhausted. She had saved him. Whoever he was safe. Then the floor vibrated. It wasn't a subway train. It was heavy footsteps on the stairs. Not the shuffling of her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Gable. These were boots. Heavy military-grade boots. Lots of them. Thud. 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 They stopped on her landing. Hollis scrambled to her feet, grabbing a kitchen knife from the counter. Her heart stopped. A fist pounded on the door. It wasn't a knock. It was a demand. "Hollis Miller!" a deep voice boomed. "Open the door, now!" She didn't move. She glanced at the boy. He was still asleep. "I'm going to count to 3, the voice said. It was calm, terrifyingly calm. 1. Hollis backed up against the bed, shielding the boy with her body. 2. Crash. The wood splintered. The lock flew across the room. The door was kicked open with such force it nearly came off its hinges. 3 men filled the doorway. They were giants wearing black tactical gear that looked out of place in her shabby hallway. But the man in the center, he wasn't wearing gear. He wore a charcoal 3-piece suit that cost more than the entire building. He was tall, with hair black as pitch and eyes like shattered glass. He didn't look like a thug. He looked like a king who had just stepped into a pigsty. This was Sulas Vane, the man who owned the docks, the man who owned the police, the man who owned the city. Hollis raised the trembling kitchen knife. "Get out!" she screamed. Silas Vane didn't even blink. He stepped into the room, scanning it in a single second. His eyes landed on the bed, on the boy. The aggression drained out of him, replaced by something far more terrifying. Absolute predatory focus. "Liam," he whispered. He looked at Hollis, then at the knife in her shaking hand. He took a step toward her. "You touched him," Silas said, his voice low and lethal. "If you hurt a single hair on his head, I will peel the skin from your bones while you watch." The air in the tiny apartment grew so heavy it felt like breathing water. Hollis didn't lower the knife, though she knew it was laughable. Against Silas Vane, a serrated steak knife was like holding a toothpick against a hurricane. "I didn't hurt him," Hollis said, her voice shaking but defiant. "I saved him. He was dying in an alley." Silas stopped 3 feet from her. Up close, he was devastating. He smelled of rain, expensive tobacco, and gunpowder. He looked at the boy Liam, who stirred on the bed. "Papa." Liam murmured, his eyes cracking open. The tension in Silas's shoulders snapped. He pushed past Hollis, ignoring the knife as if it didn't exist, and fell to his knees beside the bed. The monster vanished, replaced instantly by a father. He brushed the hair from Liam's forehead with a hand that had likely ended lives earlier that night. "I'm here, Liam. I'm here," Silas said softly. He checked the boy's temperature with the back of his hand. He looked at the wet cloths, the glass of water, the open bottle of aspirin on the nightstand. He stood up slowly and turned to face Hollis. The father was gone. The monster was back. "Check the room," Silas commanded the men behind him. "Yes, boss." 2 men began tearing her apartment apart. They checked the vents under the sink, the closet. "Hey, stop!" Hollis yelled, stepping forward. "What are you doing?" Silas loomed over her. He was a head taller, blocking out the light. "Checking for wires. Checking to see if you're working for the Russos. Because if I find out you planted him there to lure me out—" "I'm a waitress!" Hollis shouted, her anger finally overriding her fear. "I serve hash browns for tips. I found him freezing to death behind a dumpster because your parenting skills apparently suck." The room went dead silent. The 2 guards froze, staring at Hollis in horror. No one spoke to Silas Vane like that. No one who lived to see the sunset. Silas stared at her. His eyes narrowed, studying her face. He saw the dark circles under her eyes, the stained uniform, the genuine fury. "Room is clean." "Boss," one of the guards said. "She's clean. No wires. Just bills. Lots of overdue bills." Silas didn't look away from Hollis. "You took him from the alley. Why didn't you call the police?" "He asked me not to," Hollis said, crossing her arms. "He was terrified. He said they would find him. I thought he meant an abusive dad. Turns out I was right." Silas's jaw tightened. "I didn't hurt him. He was taken from his school 2 days ago. We've been tearing the city apart." He reached into his jacket pocket. Hollis flinched, expecting a gun. Instead, he pulled out a thick stack of cash. It was wrapped in a rubber band. $100 bills. It had to be 10 grand easy. He tossed it onto her bed. "For your trouble," Silas said coldly. "Grab the boy. We're leaving." One of the guards moved to pick up Liam. "Wait." Hollis stepped in between the guard and the bed. "You can't just move him yet. His fever just broke. If you take him out in that cold air, it'll spike again. He needs fluids and rest for at least another hour before you move him." The guard looked at Silas. Silas looked at the money on the bed, then back at Hollis. "You're refusing $10,000? Silas asked, baffled. "I'm refusing to let you kill your kid because you're impatient," she snapped. "Sit down. Shut up. Let him sleep." Silas Vane, the Mafia Boss of Viridia Bay, stood in the center of a 400-square-foot apartment with peeling wallpaper being ordered around by a waitress who couldn't pay her electric bill. A strange expression flickered across his face. Amusement, respect. It was gone too fast to tell. "Fine," Silas said. He sat down on Hollis's only chair, a rickety wooden thing that creaked under his weight. He crossed his legs and stared at her. "We wait an hour." The next hour was agony. Hollis busied herself making tea. She didn't want just to have something to do with her hands. The 2 guards stood by the door like statues. Silas watched her. He watched her every move. He watched her check Liam's forehead. He watched her wring out the washcloth. "What is your name?" Silas asked suddenly. The silence had been so loud that his voice made her jump. "Hollis. Hollis." He tasted the name. You have no family. Hollis. No boyfriend to come protect you from the big bad wolves in your kitchen. Just me, she said, scrubbing a spot on the counter. And I don't need protecting. Everyone needs protecting, Silas murmured, especially now. What does that mean? Before Silas could answer, his phone buzzed. He answered it, his face hardening into granite. Speak, he said. Then a pause. Are you sure? He stood up the chair, scraping loudly against the floor. They know he's here. Who? Hollis asked. The men who took him. The Russos. They tracked his watch signal. They're 3 minutes out. Silas pulled a gun from a shoulder holster. It was sleek, black, and terrifying. He racked the slide. Grab the boy, Silas barked at the guard. We move. Now. He's too weak, Hollis protested. If he stays here, he's dead. Silas grabbed Hollis's arm, his grip like iron. And so are you. Me, I didn't do anything. You touched him, Hollis, Silas said, pulling her toward the door. You saved the heir to the Vane Empire. The Russos won't leave a witness. You're in this now. I'm not going with you, she screamed, trying to wrench her arm free. Glass exploded inward. Bullets shredded the curtains and punched holes in the plaster above the bed. Hollis screamed, dropping to the floor. Down! Silas roared. He fired 3 shots out the window blind, suppressing the attackers. Get Liam to the car! Silas yelled to his men. He looked down at Hollis, who was curled up on the linoleum, covering her head. He grabbed her by the back of her uniform and hauled her to her feet. You have 2 choices, Hollis. Stay here and die in this dump, or get in the car and live. Decide. Now. Hollis looked at her shattered apartment. She looked at Liam being carried out by the guards. She looked at Silas. His hand extended, chaos erupting around him. She took his hand. The ride was a blur of screeching tires and terrified silence. Hollis sat in the back of the armored SUV, clutching Liam's hand. Silas sat in the front passenger seat, barking orders into a radio organizing a counter-strike. They didn't go to a hospital. They went up. High into the hills above the smog of Viridia Bay, to a sprawling estate surrounded by 12-foot iron gates and patrolling Rottweilers. Vane Manor. They pulled into a garage that housed more cars than Hollis had seen in her lifetime. Doctors were waiting, private doctors. They swarmed the car, taking Liam away on a stretcher, before Hollis could even say goodbye. He'll be fine, Silas said. He was standing by the open car door, offering her a hand out. My medical team is better than any hospital. Hollis stepped out. Her legs trembling. She looked down at her uniform. It was stained with mud, Liam's sweat and drywall dust. She looked at the marble floors of the garage. I want to go home, she whispered. You don't have a home anymore, Silas said bluntly. My men just torched your building. Hollis spun around. What? To kill the evidence. To make the Russos think you died in the fire. It's the only way to keep you off their hit list. You burned my apartment. Everything I own was in there. My mother's photos, She choked back a sob. I will replace it, Silas said, dismissing her life with a wave of his hand. Material things are dust. You are alive. Liam is alive. He turned and began walking toward the elevator. Come, you need a bath and new clothes. You smell like grease and fear. I am not your guest, Hollis yelled, her voice echoing in the cavernous garage. You kidnapped me. Silas stopped. He turned slowly. You are not a guest, he agreed softly. You are an asset. You saved my son. That puts you under my protection. But until I find out who sold Liam out to the Russos, until I know for a fact you aren't a spy, you are also my prisoner." He pressed the elevator button. "Welcome to Vane Manor, Hollis. Try not to break anything." The bathroom was larger than Hollis's entire apartment had been. The tub was carved from a single block of dark granite, and the water steaming in it smelled of lavender and eucalyptus. Hollis stared at herself in the floor-to-ceiling mirror. She looked like a ghost. Her skin was pale, her eyes wide and haunted, and a dark bruise was forming on her arm where Silas had grabbed her. She stripped off the diner uniform, greasy smelling of old fries and fear, and dropped it into the trash can. She would never wear it again. She scrubbed her skin until it was raw, trying to wash away the feeling of the gunshots, the fire, and the look in Silas Vane's eyes. When she stepped out, she found clothes laid out on the vanity. No uniform, no jeans. A pair of soft grey silk trousers and a cashmere sweater. They were simple, elegant, and undoubtedly expensive. She dressed in silence and opened the bathroom door. A guard was waiting. "Mr. Vane is in the library. He requests your presence." "Requests?" Hollis scoffed, though her heart pounded. "Or commands." The guard didn't answer. He just gestured down the hall. Vane Manor was a museum of cold beauty. Marble busts, oil paintings of stern-looking ancestors, and windows that looked out over the sprawling, rain-slicked estate. It was silent. Dead silent. A house this big should have life, but it felt like a tomb. The library was dim lit only by the fireplace. Silas stood by the window, a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. He had changed out of his suit into a black button-down shirt. Sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and ink, a tattoo of a serpent wrapped around his left wrist. "How is he?" Hollis asked, stepping into the room. Silas turned. His gaze raked over her, lingering for a fraction of a second on the cashmere sweater before meeting her eyes. "Stable," Silas said. "The doctors say it was severe pneumonia, compounded by exposure. If you hadn't brought him inside, if you hadn't warmed him," he took a sip of his drink, "he would be dead." He said they would find him, Hollis said, walking further into the room, refusing to be intimidated by the scale of it. "He wasn't talking about the Russos, was he?" Silas's eyes narrowed. "Why do you say that?" "Because when he saw you, he looked relieved. But before that, he was terrified of being found. Someone took him, Silas. Someone close enough to get him out of a secure school." Silas walked over to his desk and set the glass down. The sound was sharp in the quiet room. "You are observant for a waitress. I listen. People think waitresses are furniture. They talk about their affairs, their crimes, their fears right in front of me while I pour coffee. You learn to read people." "And what do you read in me?" Silas asked, his voice dropping an octave. He moved around the desk, closing the distance between them. Hollis held her ground. "I read a man who is terrifying to everyone except his son. I read a man who is used to controlling everything and is currently freaking out because he missed something." Silas stopped inches from her. The heat coming off him was palpable. "You have a sharp tongue, Hollis. It could get you cut." "You already burned my house down." She shot back, tilting her chin up to look him in the eye. "What else are you going to take?" Silas stared at her. For a moment, the air between them crackled with a strange, dark electricity. It wasn't just fear, it was recognition. Two people who had survived hard lives, standing in the wreckage. "I need you to stay," Silas said suddenly. "I thought I was a prisoner." "You are." "But Liam, he woke up 10 minutes ago." He was hysterical. He wouldn't let the nurses touch him. He asked for the lady from the rain. Hollis's heart softened. "Liam." "He trusts you," Silas admitted, and it looked like the words tasted like ash in his mouth. "I can't be with him 24/7. I have a war to fight. The Russos crossed a line, and I have to burn their world down for it. I need someone to watch Liam. Someone he trusts. Someone who isn't on my payroll." "You want to hire me?" Hollis raised an eyebrow. "As a nanny. Think of it as a private caretaker. You live here. You eat here. You get whatever you want. In exchange, you sit with him. You make sure he eats. You keep him calm. And if I say no, the gates are locked, Hollis. You can stay as a prisoner in the basement, or you can stay as a guest in the East Wing. Your choice." Hollis looked at the fire. She thought of the little boy with the blue eyes who had gripped her hand like a lifeline. She had nothing out there. No job, no home, no family. "I'll do it," she said. "But not for you. For him." Silas nodded, a grim satisfaction on his face. "Good. Corbin will show you to Liam's room." The next 2 weeks were a strange, surreal dream. Hollis settled into life at Vane Manor. It was a gilded cage, but a cage nonetheless. She spent her days with Liam. He was a sweet, intelligent boy who loved chess and hated carrots. He was starved for affection. His mother had died when he was 2, a car accident that Hollis suspected was a car bomb, and Silas was a distant brooding planet orbiting his son's sun. Hollis read to Liam. She played board games with him. She sat by his bed when the nightmares came. And she watched Silas. He was a ghost in his own house. He would appear at dinner, silent and intense, watching them interact. Sometimes Hollis would catch him looking at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. His gaze was heavy, possessive, calculating. One stormy night, Hollis was in the kitchen, making hot chocolate for Liam. The staff had gone to bed. She turned around and gasped. Silas was leaning against the doorframe, watching her. "You're up late," he said. "Liam couldn't sleep." "Thunder." She stirred the milk. Silas walked in. He looked exhausted. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his knuckles were bruised. The war with the Russos was going badly. "You're good with him," Silas said quietly. "He hasn't laughed this much in years." "He's a kid, Silas. He needs to laugh. He needs to not worry about whether the car is armored or if the food is tasted." Silas stiffened. "It is necessary." "Is it?" Hollis poured the chocolate into 2 mugs. She hesitated, then pushed one toward him. Silas looked at the mug. Then he looked at her. He picked it up and took a sip. "You didn't poison it," he noted dryly. "Not tonight. Ask me again if you keep me locked up another month." A rare, faint smile touched Silas's lips. It transformed his face, making him look 5 years younger. "You are dangerous Hollis Miller." "I'm just a waitress." "No." Silas stepped closer, invading her space. "You are the only real thing in this entire house." He reached out his hand, hovering near her face. He brushed a stray lock of hair behind her ear. His fingers were rough, calloused, but his touch was shockingly gentle. Hollis stopped breathing. Her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. For a second, she thought he was going to kiss her. The magnetic pull was undeniable. She wanted him to. God help her. She wanted the monster to kiss her. Then the radio on his belt crackled. Boss, we have a situation at the docks. Warehouse 4 is on fire. The spell broke. The wall slammed back down over Silas's eyes. He pulled his hand away. Stay in the house, he commanded, his voice cold again. Lock the door. He turned and strode out into the rain, leaving Hollis standing in the kitchen, her skin burning where he had touched her. She didn't know it then, but that moment of peace was the last one she would have. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one already inside the house. It happened on a Tuesday. Liam was recovering well. The color had returned to his cheeks. He was sitting up in bed laughing as Hollis tried to juggle 3 oranges she'd stolen from the kitchen. You're terrible at that, Liam giggled. Hey, I serve pancakes, I don't join the circus. Hollis laughed, dropping an orange. It rolled under the bed. I'll get it, Liam said, leaning over the side of the mattress. Suddenly he stopped. Liam, Hollis asked. Liam didn't answer. He made a strange, choking sound. Hollis dropped the other oranges. Liam! She rushed to the bed. Liam was convulsing. His back arched, his eyes rolled back into his head, and white foam flecked with blood bubbled at his lips. Help! Hollis screamed, her voice tearing through the manor. Help! Someone help! She grabbed Liam, turning him on his side so he wouldn't choke just like she'd learned in first aid training. He was burning up again, hotter than before. The door burst open. It wasn't Silas, he was at a meeting. It was Corbin, Silas's head of security, a massive man with a shaved head and a scar running through his eyebrow. What did you do? Corbin roared, seeing the boy seizing. I didn't do anything. Call the doctor now. 3 hours later, the medical wing of the manor was sterile and white. Silas stood in the hallway, staring through the glass at his son. Liam was hooked up to a ventilator. He looked tiny, frail, and nearly dead. Aris, the Vane family's private physician, stepped out of the room. He looked pale. Silas, the doctor said quietly. Tell me, Silas said. His voice was devoid of emotion, which meant he was on the verge of murder. It wasn't pneumonia, Dr. Aris said, holding a clipboard with shaking hands. We ran a toxicology screen because of the seizure. It's thallium. Silas froze. Thallium. Heavy metal poison. Tasteless. Odorless. It builds up in the system, slowly mimicking the flu until it reaches a critical mass. Then, total organ failure. Silas turned slowly to look at the doctor. Poison. Someone has been dosing him for weeks, Silas. Small amounts. But today he got a massive dose. Enough to kill him. Silas closed his eyes. Who has access to his food? The kitchen staff, the nurses, and... Dr. Aris hesitated. And who? Silas snapped. The girl, Hollis. Silas felt the ground tilt beneath him. No, she's with him all day. Corbin stepped forward from the shadows of the hallway. She brings him his snacks. She makes his tea. Boss, she's the only variable that's new. She saved him, Silas argued, though the doubt was a cold worm in his gut. She found him in the alley. Or she put him there, Corbin countered. Think about it. The Russos kidnap the boy, inject him with something slow-acting. Then they plant this girl to save him. She gets inside your house. She gets your trust. And she finishes the job from the inside. Search her room, Silas whispered. We already did, Corbin said. He held up a plastic evidence bag. Inside was a small glass vial, half empty. Found it taped under the drawer of her nightstand, Corbin said. It tested positive for thallium. Silas stared at the vial. His world went grey. The tea. The late nights, the way she had looked at him in the kitchen, it was all a lie, a game. She was a Russo agent. She had looked him in the eye and smiled while she slowly murdered his son. The pain was so sharp it almost brought him to his knees. But then the pain vanished. Rage took its place. Cold, absolute, biblical rage. "Bring her to the cellar," Silas said. Hollis was sitting in the hallway waiting room, crying her hands, praying for Liam, when 2 guards grabbed her. "Hey, what are you doing? Is he okay?" They didn't speak. They dragged her down the hall, past the library, past the kitchen, to a heavy iron door she had never noticed before. They threw her down a flight of concrete stairs. Hollis tumbled, scraping her knees, and landed on a cold dirt floor. She gasped for air, looking up. Silas stood at the top of the stairs. He was a silhouette against the light. "Silas," she whimpered. "What's happening?" Silas walked down the stairs slowly. He held a gun in his hand. "How much did they pay you?" he asked. His voice was dead. "What?" "The Russos. How much was my son's life worth?" 50 grand, 100. "Silas, I don't know what you're talking about." Hollis scrambled backward until her back hit the damp wall. "Thallium," Silas said, raising the gun. "We found it in your room, under your drawer." I never... Hollis's mind raced. "Thallium, poison. Silas. Look at me. I love him. I wouldn't hurt him." "You're a good actress," Silas said. He cocked the hammer. "But the show is over." "It wasn't me," Hollis screamed, tears streaming down her face. "Someone framed me, think Silas, who found the poison, who told you. Corbin found it." "Corbin?" Hollis froze. "Corbin hates me. He's never let me near Liam without watching. But wait." Her mind flashed back. 2 days ago. She had walked into the kitchen. Corbin was there. He wasn't eating. He was messing with the sugar bowl on Liam's tray. He had jumped when she entered. "Just checking for bugs," he had said. "It was the sugar," Hollis whispered. "The special sugar Liam likes for his oatmeal. Corbin. I saw him with the tray." Silas hesitated. The gun wavered slightly. "Corbin has been with me for 10 years, Silas snarled. "He took a bullet for me. And maybe the Russos offered him something better than a bullet." Hollis stood up, despite the gun pointed at her chest. "Silas, if you kill me, Liam dies. Because Corbin is still upstairs. He's going to finish the job while you're down here playing executioner." Silas stared at her. He looked into her eyes. He saw terror, yes. But he didn't see deception. He saw the same fire he had seen in the alleyway. "Give me the gun," Hollis said softly. "You're insane. If I'm the killer, shoot me. If I'm not, let me save him." A heavy thud came from upstairs. Then a shout. "Silas!" It was Corbin's voice. "The boy. He's crashing." Silas looked up at the ceiling, then back at Hollis. He was torn between 10 years of loyalty and 2 weeks of instinct. He lowered the gun. "If you are lying," Silas hissed, "I will make death look like a mercy." "I'm not lying." Hollis grabbed his arm. "We have to go. Now. Before Corbin realizes you didn't kill me." "We aren't going to the medical wing," Silas said, a new plan forming in his tactical mind. "If Corbin is the traitor, his men are everywhere. The house isn't safe." "Then what do we do?" Silas looked at her. "We run." He grabbed her hand, pulling her up the stairs. But instead of going to the main hall, he kicked open a side door leading to the utility tunnels. "We have to get Liam," Hollis panted, running alongside him. "I have a shadow team," Silas said, speaking into his earpiece. "Code Black. I repeat, Code Black. Asset is compromised. Extract the package to the garage. Now." They sprinted through the dark tunnels, coming out into the garage. The shadow team, 2 men in black masks, loyal only to Silas, were already there. They had Liam on a portable gurney, hooking him up to a mobile IV in the back of a nondescript van. "Where is Corbin?" Silas asked the masked man. "He's in the control room. He shut down the cameras. He thinks you're in the cellar, killing the girl." "Good." Silas shoved Hollis into the back of the van with Liam. He climbed into the driver's seat. "Where are we going?" Hollis asked, checking Liam's pulse. It was thready weak. Silas revved the engine. The garage door began to open. "The one place they won't look," Silas said, his eyes hard as flint. "We're going back to the gutter." As the van screeched out of the manor gates, Hollis looked back. She saw a figure standing in the window of the estate. Corbin, watching them leave. The golden cage was gone. Now they were wolves on the run. The van rattled over the potholes of the industrial district, the suspension groaning under the weight of the armor plating. Inside, the air smelled of rubbing alcohol and ozone. Hollis knelt beside Liam. The boy was conscious, but barely. His skin was grey, his breathing shallow and rapid. The mobile IV drip swayed with the motion of the van. "His heart rate is spiking," Hollis called out to the front. "Silas, we need to stop. The movement is making it worse." "We can't stop." Silas's voice was tight, strained. "Corbin has access to the city grid. He's tracking the plates. He's tracking the heat signature. If we stop, we're sitting ducks." "If we don't stop, your son's heart is going to give out," Hollis shouted back. Silas slammed on the brakes. The van skidded into a sharp turn, tires screeching on wet asphalt, and lurched down a narrow, trash-strewn alleyway between 2 derelict factories. He killed the engine. The silence that followed was deafening. Silas climbed into the back. He looked wild. His suit jacket was gone, his sleeves rolled up, revealing the snake tattoo coiling up his arm. He looked at Liam, then at the monitor. "He needs Prussian blue," Silas said, his voice cracking. "It binds the thallium. It's the only way to flush it out." "Do we have it?" "No, it's a specialized antidote. Hospitals have it. The manor had it." He punched the metal wall of the van, leaving a dent. "I walked right out without it." "You were saving our lives," Hollis said, reaching out to touch his arm. "Silas, look at me." He wouldn't. He stared at the floor, vibrating with rage and self-hatred. "I built a fortress," he whispered. "I hired the best men. I bought the best technology. And I let the devil walk right through the front door and poison my son while I sat in my library drinking scotch. You couldn't have known. It is my job to know." Silas roared, looking up. His eyes were red-rimmed. "I am Silas Vane. I am the monster under the bed. I am supposed to know everything." He slumped against the wall, sliding down until he was sitting on the metal floor. The great Mafia Boss, reduced to a terrified father in a getaway van. Hollis moved. She didn't think about it. She crawled across the floor and wrapped her arms around him. Silas stiffened for a second. Then he broke. He buried his face in the crook of her neck, his hands gripping her waist so hard it bruised. He didn't cry. Men like Silas Vane didn't cry. But he shook. He held on to her as if she were the only solid thing in a disintegrating universe. "We will fix this," Hollis whispered into his hair. "I know a place. It's not a fortress. It's not a hospital, but it's safe." Silas pulled back, searching her face. "Where?" Sal's diner. The diner. Silas looked incredulous. Hollis, that's the first place they'll look. No. Hollis shook her head. Sal closed it down last week for renovations. The windows are boarded up. The power is cut. It's a ghost building. And Sal used to be a medic in the Navy. He has a stockpile in the basement. Silas stared at her. You're full of surprises, Waitress. Drive, she said. They arrived at the diner under the cover of darkness. It was a hollow shell, smelling of sawdust and old grease. They carried Liam into the kitchen, laying him on a prep table that Hollis had scrubbed clean 1,000 times. Sal was there. He didn't ask questions. He took one look at Silas Vane, one look at the dying boy, and he went to work. He didn't have Prussian blue, but he had activated charcoal and potassium, a poor man's filter. It will buy us time. Sal grunted, crushing pills into a paste. But he needs the real stuff within 6 hours, or his kidneys shut down. Once that happens, game over. Silas checked his watch. I know where to get it. The hospital? Hollis asked. No. Too public. The Russos have watchers at every ER in the city by now. Silas checked the magazine of his gun. I'm going to the source. The Russo compound, Hollis gasped. Silas. That's suicide. It's a fortress. They made the poison, Silas said grimly, which means they have the antidote on site to protect their own people in case of a leak. I'm going to take it from them. He turned to the door. Wait. Hollis ran to him. Silas stopped. He turned, and for the first time, he touched her face without hesitation. His thumb traced her lower lip. If I don't come back, Silas said, his voice low and intense. There is a safe in the Cayman Islands. The code is Liam's birthday. Take the money. Take Liam. Go to Europe. Never look back. You're coming back, Hollis said fiercely. You have to. Why? Because, Hollis grabbed his lapels, pulling him down. I'm not raising a mafia prince by myself. Silas's eyes flared. He leaned in, crushing his mouth against hers. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a promise. It was desperate, hungry, and tasted of metal and blood. It lasted for an eternity, and it was over too soon. Lock the door, Silas commanded. He pulled away, turned, and vanished into the night. 2 hours passed. Sal was monitoring Liam's pulse. Hollis was pacing the kitchen, holding a butcher knife she had taken from the rack. Every creak of the old building sounded like a footstep. Every gust of wind sounded like a gunshot. Then the phone in the diner's office rang. Hollis froze. The line was supposed to be dead. Sal looked at her. Don't answer it. It rang again, and again. Hollis walked slowly to the office. She picked up the receiver. She didn't speak. Hello, Hollis. A smooth, deep voice purred on the other end. It wasn't Silas. It was Corbin. He's dead, you know, Corbin said. Silas. He walked right into the trap at the Russo compound. We have his body. Hollis's knees buckled. She grabbed the desk to stay upright. Liar! I'm sending you a picture right now. Hollis's cell phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with trembling fingers. A photo. Grainy dark. A man lying face down on concrete, a pool of dark liquid spreading around him. The suit was right. The hair was right. A scream tore from her throat. Now. Corbin continued, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. I know you're at the diner. Sal's old spot. Clever girl. I'm outside. Hollis dropped the phone. She looked at the boarded-up front window. Through the cracks in the wood, she saw headlights. 3 SUVs. Men getting out. Corbin stood in the center, holding an assault rifle. "Sal," Hollis whispered, running back to the kitchen. "They're here." Sal looked up, his face grim. He pulled a shotgun from under the counter. "Take the boy. Go out the back." "There is no back exit. They'll have the alley covered. Then we fight." Sal racked the shotgun. "No," Hollis said. Her grief was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. Silas was dead. Liam was dying. She was the only thing standing between the boy and the monsters. She looked at the prep table. She looked at the fryer vats. They were cold, but the oil was still there. "Sal," she said, "turn on the gas. All the burners." "What, you'll blow us up, not us," Hollis said, her eyes hard. "Them." The front door of the diner exploded inward. Corbin stepped through the smoke, flanked by 4 Russo soldiers. The beam of his flashlight cut through the dust. "Come out, Hollis," Corbin called out. "Make it easy and I'll make it quick. You can't hide in a grease trap forever." Silence. Corbin signaled his men. They fanned out, moving toward the kitchen. They kicked open the swinging double doors. The kitchen was dark. The smell of gas was faint but present. "Check under the counters," Corbin ordered. One of the soldiers moved forward. He stepped on something. A glass bottle. It rolled away with a clatter. Click. A lighter flickered in the darkness. Corbin spun around. Hollis stood on top of the stainless steel walk-in freezer unit, 10 feet in the air. She held a Zippo lighter in one hand and a Molotov cocktail fashioned from a ketchup bottle and a rag in the other. "You're right, Corbin," Hollis said, her voice echoing in the tiled room. "I can't hide." "Don't!" Corbin screamed, realizing the gas levels. "You'll kill us all." "That's the plan," Hollis said. She threw the lighter. It didn't hit the floor. It hit the open vat of cooking oil she had preheated and mixed with high-proof alcohol from Sal's stash. Whoosh! A wall of fire erupted, separating the kitchen from the dining area. The gas line caught. The explosion blew the roof off the back of the diner. The force of the blast knocked Corbin off his feet, slamming him into the wall. 2 of his men were engulfed instantly. Hollis, shielded by the heavy freezer unit, jumped down into the chaos. The smoke was blinding. The sprinklers kicked on, but they did nothing against the grease fire. She grabbed Liam's unconscious body from the floor behind the prep line, where she had hidden him. Sal was already at the back door, kicking the hinges loose, the wood weakened by the blast. "Go, go!" Sal yelled, grabbing Liam from her. Hollis turned to follow, but a hand grabbed her ankle. Corbin. He was burned, his face a mask of soot and blood, but he was alive. And he was strong. He yanked her down. Hollis hit the wet tile hard, her chin cracking against the floor. "You little bitch!" Corbin snarled, climbing on top of her. His hands went for her throat. Hollis clawed at his face, but he was too heavy. Black spots danced in her vision. The fire roared around them, consuming the diner. "This is it," she thought. "I'm sorry, Silas. I couldn't save him." Bang! Corbin's head snapped back. A spray of red mist covered Hollis's face. The grip on her throat loosened. Corbin slumped forward, dead weight. Hollis gasped, shoving the body off her, coughing violently. She looked up toward the smoke-filled doorway. A figure stood there, walking through the fire like a demon returning to hell. Silas. He was covered in blood, most of it not his own. His shirt was shredded. He held a smoking pistol in one hand and a small silver medical case in the other. "Silas," Hollis croaked. "The photo." "You were dead." Silas stepped over Corbin's body, without looking down. He reached a hand down to Hollis. "I played dead," Silas said, his voice raspy. "It's the only way to get them to lower their guard." He pulled her up. He looked at her burned uniform, the bruise on her neck, the fire in her eyes. "You burned down the diner," he noted, looking at the inferno. "It seemed like the thing to do," she panted. "Where is my son? With Sal, in the alley." Silas nodded. He opened the silver case. Inside was a syringe filled with blue liquid. "Let's go." 1 month later. The rain in Viridia Bay was usually cold, but tonight it felt cleansing. The grand ballroom of the Vane Manor was filled to capacity. The crystal chandeliers glittered over the heads of every crime boss, politician, and power player in the city. The Russos were gone, wiped out in a single night of coordinated strikes, known now as the Red Tuesday. The room went silent as the double doors at the top of the grand staircase opened. Silas Vane stepped out. He wore a tuxedo that fit him like armor. He looked down at the crowd, the undisputed king of the city. But he didn't walk down alone. He turned and offered his hand. Hollis stepped out. She wasn't wearing a waitress uniform. She wore a gown of midnight blue silk that clung to her curves and trailed behind her like podku. Diamonds glittered at her throat. Diamonds that Silas had put there himself. She looked out at the sea of faces, the people who killed the people who ruled. She didn't flinch. A small hand slipped into hers. Liam, looking healthy and sharp in a miniature tuxedo, stood by her side. He squeezed her hand. She squeezed back. "Are you ready?" Silas asked quietly, leaning close to her ear. "I'm terrified," Hollis admitted, keeping her smile fixed. "Good," Silas said. "Fear keeps you sharp." He kissed her knuckles right there in front of everyone. A public declaration. She wasn't just his lover. She wasn't just the caretaker. "Long live the Queen," Silas whispered. They began to descend the stairs together. Hollis Miller, the girl who couldn't pay her electric bill, the girl who scraped gum off tables for minimum wage, looked down at the empire beneath her feet. She tightened her grip on the hand of the man she loved and the boy she had saved. She wasn't a waitress anymore. She was a Vane. And God help anyone who tried to touch her family again. And that is the story of how a single act of kindness in a rainy alleyway changed the fate of an entire city. Hollis proved that true power isn't about muscles or guns. It's about the courage to stand between the innocent and the dark, even when your hands are shaking. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button. It helps us bring more heavy-hitting dramas to you. What would you have done in the diner? Would you have run or would you have fought? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell. Next week we have a story about a bodyguard who falls in love with the witness he's sworn to protect. But she's hiding a secret that could kill them both. You don't want to miss it. Thanks for listening.